Yeah. So how is this politics of BS? This BCCI works. I
How
mean,
does it work? Very
yeah.
simply, it works like all politics. Except in the past, what had happened, there was a sort of a distinction between what was cricket and what was political. And sort of all political parties came to the BCCI. People from those political parties came to the BCCI with the intention of bettering themselves, their public profile, their bank accounts. I'm saying loosely, but generally, their what is their commercial sort of clout in their region. Maybe even increasing their political clout in the region, but in a very small way. And it was mass cross-party kind of a thing. That's what it usually was. And it was a mixture of politics, business, some administrators came into it, like IAS bureaucrats and all that. And everyone comes to cricket because of the profile that it gives you, comes to sport because of the profile that it gives you. And it's the same with the BCCI. Now, what has happened, we don't know. Because now there seems to be people inside the BCCI think that there's going to be a little bit of a change in the sense of how much the political dispensation in power dictates what happens. It's at a very interesting stage. So we think there may be a crossover, there may not be. We don't know. But people inside the BCCI see that there has been a change very, very obviously in the last, from what they knew the board to be. And this is because the quantum of money has just gone up crazily in the BCCI with the advent of the IPL. It's just reached like a crazy number of, and therefore everyone wants a share of the pie.
What do you think? How come? What were the background and the qualifications of Jayesh Shah to become the number 2 person in BCCI?
Aren't you a better person to answer that question? None. There are no. Let me tell you one thing interesting. As much as the qualifications were of any former BCCI secretary to be in that role. So to be fair, none of our former secretaries have been politically, connected with sport in any way. They've been very good administrators. Very good, very bad, of a various range. The current BCCI secretary at the moment, he appears to, I'm trying to make sure that I don't get sued or something. He appears to allegedly be there on account of the fact that he is related to the Home Minister of the country. And what has happened following that is that all the power has gravitated towards him as an administrative power, and also because of the fact that the cricket board is trying to ignore the Supreme Court mandated rules and regulations that they had put in place, and change the way the board is functioned, that they're happy to do it. They allow these people like this to come into the into the game and to be there, because they think, look, let all of us look after our territory. And if it helps for us to have a powerful political person here, let's see how long we can push it. Both Jay Shah and Saurav Ganguly are fundamentally, by the rules of the Supreme Court's mandated new constitution, they are not eligible to be in those posts anymore. So fundamentally, they should not be there. But they are, because an appeal has gone to the Supreme Court for it, and it keeps getting postponed. So, and I'll tell you another interesting thing, that the president of the Gujarat Cricket Association was first, I think, Mr. Modi, and then Mr. Shah. I could be wrong. The moment they have left those posts are now vacant. There is no president of the Gujarat Cricket Association. There is only a vice president. So it's become like that, position that you cannot occupy. That is so holy. It has been occupied by like the Pope. So you can't. You have to be a Pope to occupy it. And currently, they don't consider themselves Pope enough to be in that sort of role. So that's the kind of not the changes, that's the kind of things we've seen in the scenario that's there. I'm trying to look back at what I remember my experience of about 3 decades as a journalist, about whether a post has been left empty out of honoring the past president, but I could be wrong. It might have happened in Tripura or in Rajasthan, I can't remember it. But at the moment, this is what it is. And if you go to the website of the Gujarat Cricket Association, there is only a vice president. There is no president, because no one is worthy to occupy that post, which was further held by the Pope.
Yeah. Since this is the Bangalore Lit Fest, I had a literary question for you. So, I think the generation of you, Prem Panikar, Amit Verma, who were the best writers in the 90s, and, with the advancement of Cricinfo, for example, it's been, a generation change. Who do you think are the next big writers of cricket in the national?
You have a lot of very talented, very younger people that are there. We don't think of us as writers. We don't think that we are kind of ever going to retire. In that we keep going. We keep grumbling and whatever. But a lot of people. So there are people there's Roshan Tyagarajan who writes for the Deccan Herald, who's fun. You must read him. There's Sid Monga who worked for Cricinfo. There are people, there's Sriram Veera, so a lot of them are Cricinfo sort of, alumni. Yeah, so a lot of them are there. And then you've got a lot of other younger people that are coming through. You'll hear independent voices. The moment you hear somebody saying something which is not the popular thing, that's when you know, okay, this person's saying something different. They've got something to say. And you have a lot of that. In sports writing, you'll get a lot of that. There's a big variety in the kind of sports writers that we have, sports reporters and writers we have in India now. So there's a lot of people that are there. I think a lot of the tenor of the writing may change because the interaction between the superstars and the media just gets far less. It's very carefully monitored and controlled, and it's not as informal as it used to be when I was at that, traveling with the team and so on. So you will get a lot of that. You will get people. You must also remember that there will be a lot of younger writers whose editors will not allow them to write what they want to say. So there is that also. They'll say, why are you the grumbler? Why are you the person upsetting the apple cart, to use a cliche? Why are you the one making the noise? So there are a lot of writers like that, and you hear about them but social media gives you the access to hear what they have to say and what is their sort of view on things that are going on. So it's not all bad. It's
This is following his question. In the olden days, there was people like Neville Cardas and Raju Bharatan who not only used to report, but they used to also write very well. And but do you think that anybody who's emerging like that would?
All the people I was telling you, they're all there. You'll see, if you read in the papers, you'll find them there. You have to see that they have a platform that will give them that voice to grow and to emerge, in the sense. What is happening now in a lot of papers is that you're not able to see a lot of domestic coverage, which is where a lot of us went and did our training almost, that we're covering first class matches, we are doing, cricket I'm talking about, Ranji Trophy, or you're doing small city tournaments. A lot of newspapers now don't have space for that. A lot of websites now, you organize it in a particular way. You've got a couple of websites like The Bridge that looks at sport in a different way. You've got Scroll and The Field. But in terms of mainstream media like TV, it's taken away the sports department. The sports department and papers are now, you get huge space for people writing on Premier League football. You'll get a lot of Indian writers writing on Premier League football as well. It's a lot of space, but not on Indian football as you would maybe want them to. Football, again, you've got a niche audience, so you've got a lot on the internet. You will find where the challenging authority is the absolutely the way to go, and the way the younger people definitely do respond to that kind of a thing. So I think it's a very lively environment, but the mainstream is sort of a bit flat in that department.
Sorry, just a tangential point to what Sharda was saying and to your question. See, when all of us were working full-time in this field, you didn't have as much access to cricket as you do now. So when we wrote match reports, you read our match reports because it was the best way you got to get a sense of what happened during the day's play. Today, you don't need a writer to tell you what happened. You're seeing it live, you're seeing the highlights, you have instant comments on Twitter and stuff like that. So you already know what happened. So you're still judging today's writers by the writers of the past when the ecosystem has changed. So today's, you look for the analytical writers or the writers. Kartikeya Date, for instance, who does a lot of the data work. Sriram Veera. They are the stars today. We were lucky that, you didn't see cricket. We did. So, yeah.
Yeah, and just to point to that, right? Like Ashwin's Kuti stories was really, really well done, right? Because he got the analysts in and he was getting a different viewpoint. Whereas the BCCI controlled TV was pure nonsense, right? I mean, I can see it, they keep repeating it.
Yeah.
And somehow that entire system is a closed vessel where no opposing viewpoint can ever come in.
I don't think even Ashwin in Kurti story, say for example, the team did badly, whether he'll be able to do an analysis of it. And the thing is whether he'll be able to point out things. So it was a happy time. It was a great thing. So basically, Ashwin did with his video blogs. He did what we as reporters would have done after the game, to go and try and speak to the players, say, okay, what happened? What's the story? If you know people, they'll tell you. You'll write about it. It'll become sort of the stuff of legend kind of thing. And now there's a new medium and a new players doing it. So we don't know if people get bothered in the BCCI by why is he doing the video. It's also possible that it could be. Because they'll say that because their desire to, their control is in their name. So the desire to control is so strong that they say that, it can't be allowed. And even their media department is sort of, any organization's own media department is like their PR department. So Ashwin's is different, but it's PR maybe done in a clever way. I don't know whether that's the right thing to say, whether I'll get into trouble for it. It's sort of good news. It's good news, which is happy news. It became so popular because we had a good game. And
Also in context of the fact that you had a sensational series to cover, and it went well for India.
And there were no journalists there.
Yeah. There were no journalists. And there was a narrative. I mean, people wanted to know, this came out of the blue, right? You didn't expect team D maybe to go and beat Australia in their fortress when they were playing their best team. So Ashwin had everything handed to him. If you look at the Ashwin blogs after that, they've sort of petered out in the sense of, yeah. And Sharda's point is well taken. If India has a bad loss, what did Ashwin have to say about, say, the World T20, for instance?
This is in as a follow-up for one of the statements you made in one of the podcasts. You were working on a book related to women in sports in India.
No, not in media.
In India.
In
Women
India,
in
sorry.
sports in India.
Yeah.
Has that come along?
No,
Is
it
there
has not
any
even moved
snippets?
1 inch from where it was. It is part of sort of a long plan. Prem also yells at me all the time. What are you doing? So it's there or thereabout. It's there. It's very much in the pipeline.
Okay, so
But
we
the
can
pipeline
expect
sort of-
something pretty soon?
Not soon. soon is a tough thing because it'll take time, but it's there. It's very much there.
Correct.
But it's not about cricket. Yeah.
That's good to hear as well, that it's not about cricket. And a follow-up for that is twofold. What is your point on the women IPL in India? Is that something which will happen pretty soon, or will we be beaten by probably PCB? I think Ramesh Raja said he's probably looking to have Premier League before any other Asian countries. And another follow-up for the same topic is with the women cricket in Afghanistan. So since India has been probably a big support to even the Afghanistan men's cricket, do you also happen to see a option or a scenario where there can be an Afghanistan women cricket team in exile, probably based out of India?
I'll just answer the second question first. The Afghanistan women's team out of exile based in India, the chances are very less that it's going to happen. I mean, I know for a fact that there are other countries where they have moved, but India doesn't seem to be the place where they will be welcomed in that sense. And the women's IPL is a great thing. It should have happened, but it won't happen because until now, all that they're trying to do is to get these 10 teams to play. And I haven't been able to write a story about it, so I'm just announcing it. Whoever wishes to take it up may please do so. The Lucknow team, the CVC, not Lucknow, Ahmedabad, which won the CVC partners that won that league, they have not received a letter of intent from the BCCI saying that you are hereby allowed to offer a team up. You own the Ahmedabad franchise basically. They've not got the paperwork because everyone's trying to find some fault in them because they don't seem to be the favored party to have got that franchise. So that's what's going on. So they've gone out, they're doing the scouting. So this is happening in the men's IPL. So you think they have attention and focus on for what the women want. unlikely. But I do know for a fact that that there are a couple of teams at least in the IPL that would be happy to post their own women's teams if there was a women's IPL. Anisha Ghosh, who writes for Cricinfo, she wrote a superb piece on. Everyone said, "Are there's not enough talent available. There are not enough people available." So she actually did a forensic breakdown of the number of women cricketers there are and what was the size of the talent pool, and it was huge. It was 700. So from 700, if you're not going to be able to find those 140 or 170 or whatever the mathematical number is that you need, half of them, then and plus foreign players. So that sounds a bit it sounds a bit ludicrous that you're not doing it. And so at the moment that's not, because what has happened again, I could be on here for about 5 hours. What has happened again is that that those kind of duties were supposed to have gone to a corporate office of the BCCI, which was your CEO and your CFO, but they took the powers away from according to the new Lodha constitution, they took the powers away from the secretary and so on. But obviously, how can the BCCI secretary, whoever it is, not to have power? So it's 3 people trying to run this game with 2,000 matches and 5,000, 6,000 cricketers. So that's what's the problem is. Every single decision, including say the headband on the umpire's hat, which costs 9,000 rupees, has to be signed off by the secretary before the money moves. So how is a women's IPL going to come out of this? Was there any more question? No, that's it. No?
You want to also think of the fact that the men's IPL wasn't, while the plan was mooted, the Indian board wasn't in favor of a men's IPL at all until they got pushed by Subhash Chandra and the ICL, and they realized that an alternate might emerge. Then they started. So the BCCI has a habit of stumbling into things and then pretending that they invented it. It's not like they use their brains much.
I mean, that is a point. That is a fair point. You are talking about Ramiz Rawal. But that would be the best thing. That is the Pakistan Women's IPL comes out before us. That would be superb.
But then the BCCI having gone to the extent of, okay, not now, we don't have enough talent. They're pig-headed enough to just say, Pakistan karne do. Australia did it. England did it, made successes of it. South Africa did it. New Zealand is doing it. Pretty much everybody is doing it except India. Because talent nahi hai.
So just look for that article in Cricinfo, which is about the women's IPL and by Anisha Ghosh. And she has that number, and I think it's around 750 or 800 or something like that.
Yeah, Sharda. The recent incident about Kohli's captaincy, that's been happening for a long time in the history of the BCCI. But one thought that with this move of players getting into administration, such things, it's surprising that it's still happening. What do you have to say about that?
I mean, the whole, if you ever wanted a bad advertisement for players getting into administration, you got it. Whereas there are players who have been administrators and they have been less hype, like Sabah Karim worked in the BCCI office, Anil Kumble and Javagal Srinath ran KSCA for 3 years. There have been good examples also. But in terms of spectacular fail examples is this one. Epic fail, as the kids say. So, I think that is what, to me personally, that's what felt the worst. This happened to you, so you're allowing it. How can you allow it to happen again? But that's what they say, that in adversity, this is a paraphrase, in adversity, all men bring out the best in them. When you want to really know what a man is like, give him power. So that is what seems to have happened in this case. I mean, you would have wanted a more, you are a 21st century board. I was talking to someone who used to work with the BCCI before, and he said, look, this thing could have been handled so easily. It was just a PR image management disaster from the word go. So when Dhoni's captaincy switched from test to, he retired, and then basically he lost both the white ball captaincies at one time. That was done in a very engineered and a calm manner behind the scenes. And it was just worked on by somebody who was smart enough to see what was coming. So the moment Kohli announces his retirement from captaincy of the T20 internationals, that office or whoever is the PR machinery of the BCCI should have said, look, this is the next thing that's going to come. Let us stop this storm from rising. This is what we need to do. But who's going to speak to the Pope, in that sense? So it didn't happen. And that's why we are left with this absolute mess.
And you're talking about the color of the ball. should the color of the ball be a factor for who's the captain, who's not the captain? Why is this divide, and how justified is this?
I think it's a justified thing, particularly because it's going to be very difficult to get all format players now of a variety that can you almost say your 3/4 of your team plays all three formats. That's going to be virtually impossible. You will have a handful of say 2 or 3 players maybe who can play all formats, and that's why you're going to have a different set of skills that are needed. You're going to have a different.
But in this case, where you have the player who's playing all three formats, you need to take away captaincy from him and divide the captaincy.
Because he chose to split the captaincy by saying that I'll take the captaincy that I'm comfortable with. That was the reason, I think, why. It seemed sensible to say, look, if you're not going to do, and we hardly play any T20 internationals in a year. We play about 12 or 10 or something like that. So it's not like you've got a lot. But I think the point is that the moment there's failure in the World Cup, it comes back to you. And you have also been, I mean, this was his first World T20 World Cup as a captain. He's already captained in one, in the ODI World Cup, in the 50-over World Cup. And I think he just thinks that less of this limited overs cricket will be better for my batting in that. I don't have to worry about all these other 25 million things, but it's fine if you don't have to worry about that. It's okay. You don't have to captain for the ODI format either. You know, and so you split it that way. You can't have a test and an ODI captain and a T20 captain. It seems a bit awkward, but I'm looking at it again. I'm saying, look, given that T20 is a completely different game almost, it would be considered, okay, maybe, why not? But how is it going to work if, say, the T20 captain and Virat Kohli are in the 50-over team? So it just gets messier and more complicated. I don't know what Prem thinks about this.
No, I mean, all the points that Sharda made are valid, and I'll make one more. There is a fundamental difference between the way you think in a test, when you're leading a test team, versus when you're leading a white ball team.
And particularly 2020 white ball team.
But
that is switched on
ODIs,
every ball is an event in that 20.
And the advantage that a test team has is, look, you can slow things down in a session if it's not going your way. You bowl less overs, you just do a holding operation, go back, look at what the analysts are saying, look at what if you remember that Australia series, a lot of times the change around came immediately after coming back from a session. That is because you're getting feedback from there. And so you need, Kohli isn't really ahead of the game. He's not somebody who thinks 3 steps ahead. Rohit is. So,
but Rohit is now injured.
Yeah, Rohit is now injured. That's another problem. But if you notice, for instance, when you're coming to the closing stages of a T20 and you have a batsman coming out, now clearly he's coming out to hit. There are 5 overs, 4 overs left. Rohit will put a close-in fielder. Virat will put the fielder on the boundary line. And no fielder on the boundary line is going to stop you if you're going to hit. So, yeah.
Yeah, changing tack once more. Any comments on the ECB racism controversy? Anything that you have to say about the whole?
I was surprised because no, I'm not surprised that there's racism in Yorkshire. Let me say that to start with. No. So I had written a piece for Hindustan Times about this, that I have done 2 studies that are connected with ethnic minorities in England and Australia and their relationship with cricket. And when this was in 97 in England and this was in 2013 in Australia, we're talking about 15 years gap. And you literally came back with the same stories. And it was quite depressing because you're saying that it's the same thing. And what happens is that so when Azim Rafiq gave his testimony, what he said was that I am, because there are, in the professional game, that the numbers are so small, that is what shows you where the problem is. You know, and when you're looking at it on the outside, both the Cricket Australia, Cricket Victoria, where I had done the study, and the Essex Cricket Association, they did all the right things in terms of making the right noises. You know, they said, okay, we'll have a minority commission, we'll have community engagement. So you get all those kids to come and play and you're seeing it that they're there. But after that, what happens? When you go into the higher level, slightly professional level, what happens? So like my friend Joanne King, she used to be a statistician and a scorer and work in, I don't know if you read Ted Corbett, who used to write for the Hindu and the Sports Star. So Joe and he used to work together. She said, look, it's one thing to have these programs in place and it's another thing to see if they're working. So and it's such a simple thing, and it's true. So you have these fantastic programs, but what if your player walks into a dressing room to play for a junior Yorkshire team and still he's going to get sledged because he's Pakistani, or goes to Australia? In Australia, umpires get sledged in club matches. So so there is this big change, and and the lack of and the complete opposite of it, in the sense you can see how New Zealand's multi-race players come through and play, and from Pacific Islands and from Asia, and you're seeing that, and you're not seeing that in England. So the other scary thing to me was how much this box ticking was done correctly in Azim Rafiq's case, that even the Professional Cricket Association reported him as missing. Said in case he killed himself, he'll say, look, we went out looking for him. That was really the most scary thing of that whole episode that happened. And it's quite sad that it goes on. It's quite tragic in that sense. And that Michael Holding keeps saying that, look, a lot of us as athletes of a particular level of stardom, we were very careful not to sort of, let's not call this out because it's fine with us, But so Thierry Henry, who's coaching somewhere, I think he was in Canada, somewhere else. He said that when he goes to America, no one recognizes him. He's saying, that's Mikey when my color starts to show. My color comes back. My race comes back, So you have that. You definitely have that. And I think people in England say it's got worse for them on the streets, people of Asian, Indian, Pakistani, Bangladesh, than it was in the past. It's more vocal. It's more out there. It's like it's part of maybe the political environment that there is everywhere in the world.
But has the class changed? I mean, typically cricket in England was very classist, right? It was upper class playing.
No,
and is it still an upper class thing in England? And
they're trying to change it. They're trying to
yeah.
change a lot of it. But what's happening in England, for example, is that cricketers are only coming from a particular school, like a big bunch of them. So it comes to these academies that work there in their county. So these county academies go looking for these bright young kids, and then they put them into these public schools, because into what are those, they're public/private schools. They've lost public grounds to play on, so you can't have those city kind of country clubs, and they're still trying to do it, and they're still fighting with football in England, which is because cricket is still seen as a slightly elitist sport, whereas in parts of England like Bradford, and in parts of say East London, where there's a big Bangladeshi community there, it's a game of the street in that sense. But they still have to try, and they say, look, we'll take you in and then you have to be like us. That's what the ruling is. Then you have to, alcohol is a big thing. Drinking is a big thing in cricket. In all this problem of cricket, it stems from the fact of the post-game drink. That post-game drink becomes one very big deal if the Asian guy doesn't want to drink alcohol. So I did not realize how big it was until this kept coming back to you. And the interesting thing is, a West Indian origin person who was playing club cricket, he told me, he said, listen, that's just an excuse, because we can drink anybody under the table. We said we go to these clubs and then they tell us that that you're not, what is the reason they gave? He said, he said, you're not drinking enough. You're not generating enough money. So it's almost like it's an excuse that they use, to try and keep you out. I keep saying it's like my way of playing and your way of playing are so different, whereas they're not. But it's everything else around it that becomes becomes the sticking point,
on your own. Have you noticed that these kind of things bubble up to the surface when you have a major political shift towards the right wing? Because whenever there is a right wing, one of the fundamental parts of their polity is to create an other and divisions. And suddenly this comes up.
Yeah, and South Africa has been very, very active in trying to change this sort of narrative. I remember this was in the early 2000s when we'd gone in. They said Cricket South Africa had actually introduced a program to get non-white journalists to come and work in the press box, in the sense that it was like a mentorship program, that you did a course, you applied, you did this thing, and you got to be in the press box. Working for X, Y, or Z. Can I tell you? Working for whichever publication or paper that you are working for. And it was because they said we have to get different faces and different people in there. And the fact that South Africa are talking about it with their biggest stars is a very big deal, and they've done this in the past. It's quite an admirable thing that they're doing it, that you're seeing it's coming out. And you're looking at all the cliches of blacks are fast bowlers and they're not batsmen and all that, all those kinds of things also playing out. And this is in a country that's trying to be better, that's trying to be as equal as you can. Who have a black rugby captain? Sorry.
Hi. Two-part question. The first is on the IPL. There's a common understanding, shall we say, that the IPL has really led to so thanks to IPL, you don't really have all of the flaws associated with, say, state under 15s elections and so on, which were famously considered flawed and so on, right? And there is this whole perception that thanks to IPL, whatever fans of the longer formats may say, right? Thanks to IPL and so on, there's actually been a true identification of talent and so on, right? So I'd be very interested in hearing your take on that. That's the first part. The second part is in terms of your traditional skills, right? Like, say, grinding it out, batting, just staying there without actually scoring, right? So those sort of skills. So what's your take on whether those skills will still find a reward and market, or whether those skills are slowly going to die down?
That depends. The second question depends on whether the game is continued to be played in the longer format. It's whether it thrives. As I think Prem pointed out in the last session, that whether it thrives, or Sid pointed out that it has to thrive beyond these 3-4 big countries. It has to survive beyond India, Pakistan, India, Sri Lanka, India, Australia, England, and South Africa. That is what is there. The fact of the IPL sort of evening out selections that are there, it's absolutely valid that teams are able to go and look for players that they want of a particular kind. Does this mean that it has wiped out a practice of bad selection? No, absolutely not. There is a current case that's going on in, I think, Uttarakhand, where they have found that the fellow who accused Wasim Jafar of what he accused him of is involved in some kind of is known to the, I'm again being careful, is known to the person who's been caught by the police for running a racket of getting money to get people selected. So that has not gone away, fundamentally that is still there. Whether now there is definitely more desperation on the part of people to have their talents seen, of young teenagers to have their talents looked at. Is there overage cricket? Has that gone away in India? I don't think so in some parts. In some states it's not. It's a handful of states where it's pretty good. In a lot of them it's bad. In the new states it's apparently worse. So the IPL has many advantages. It has changed the economy of cricket in worldwide. It has given more players access to a good income and a good livelihood in the game. But it has not done away with the flaws that they used to be, because eventually it's just a 2-month league, and the rest of so the other worry from, say, first-class cricketers and much older people is that the first-class 3 and 4 day game will die down because no one wants to play it anymore. That's the other worry. And whether you are going to address that as a board or as a state association, that remains to be seen, For aging. Oh, well done.
Moving a bit away from cricket.
Yes.
I came across this book. I came across this book on history of football in India, and I was going through it. And introduction of the book sort of had something about how the author tried to include a chapter on women's football in the Northeast, a club football, and their publisher or editor, I'm not sure, removed it because, I don't know, pages apparently was the reason. I was disappointed, obviously, and it started making. I started thinking about how women's football. I mean, now Indian football for men's. ISL is there. People are watching. They're following. But like women's football isn't that mainstream. I just want your insight on how you think this might move forward. Like, do you see some future, or do you think what is like the, I don't know, initial steps for it to become mainstream?
Women's football, for example, there is pressure on the AIFF to show that women are playing actively everywhere, right? It comes from FIFA. So they are compelled to do it. But as has happened even with men's football, that a lot of what you'll see about football is on the surface. So you'll see the ISL, which is, big money, big noise, all the rest of it. And state leagues are shutting down everywhere, even for the men. So there are fewer what they call pathway in corporate language, opportunities for young people starting through, and they don't know where to go. Like, what women need is not just an ISL event, they need many ISL events. Why do our young players or our young teams, men's or women's, go and take part in these, exposure tours? It's because they're not given enough opportunities to play higher quality competition in the country. So they say, okay, why is there no high quality competition in the country? Because there's not enough competition in the country. So in every sport in India, there is a big gap of the amount of local events that you have, all like a ladder of events, unlike in cricket where you see it. So cricket's pathway is very clear. For a young player, say even 5 years ago, you knew as a young player, if you wanted to start out in men's cricket, you knew how you would go about it. But in women's cricket, it's a bit ephemeral. You don't know. In women's football, it's similar. So it's that structure and the pathway of this vast thing that you need to have, which is not there. And so what you're doing in having this one women's IPL is slightly surface and a little bit of patchwork. It's surface. Yeah. So it needs to be much more.
All right. Thank you, everybody, for your wonderful questions. And thank you, Sharda, for your wonderful answers.